Is it a buy or is it a bust? That's what we're going to find out today when it comes to Fiddler's Georgia Heartwood single barrel proof wheated bourbon. All right, Fiddler recently really impressed me with this bottle. This is the toasted rye. It's been on my shelf now for a few months, and I just keep going back to it because it's actually friggin' delicious. But there's another bottle that caught my attention, and a buddy of mine, Delicious Dairy, was kind enough to send in a pretty generous pour from his bottle. Look how dark this stuff is. This is the Fiddler Georgia Heartwood cask strength single barrel. Comes in, this particular one comes in at 113.2 proof. But a lot of people are doing like picks of this. So you might find a pick of this at, you know, maybe your Total Wine, on Seal Box. I think Take and the crew even may have done a pick of this. But we're gonna see if this is something that you should buy or is it a bust. Here's what you gotta know about this juice. It is MGP juice, but it is the bare minimum to be called bourbon. So it is 51% corn. Like I said, bare minimum amount of corn in there as you could possibly have and still call it a bourbon. And then it is 45% wheat. That is a ton of wheat in a wheated bourbon, right? And then just that 4% malted barley. So this is an extremely wheated bourbon. Now, I will admit, wheated bourbons for me are pretty hit or miss. There's really not a lot of wheated bourbons out there that genuinely impress me. I don't know if it's something about what wheat does to the whiskey itself, but I find them to lean further towards like the clean side of the tasting notes. I get a lot of like clean ethanols, sometimes even sort of vegetal notes. I'm not the biggest wheater guy in the world. Every now and then there's a wheater that'll really impress me. You know, like the CYPB was especially good. I like Weller Antique 107. The Heart Release from Maker's Mark, very good. But overall, I find that wheat, to me, tends to take more away from whiskey than it imparts. It kind of mutes them. But this does not visually look like a wheater, does it? Oh my gosh, look how freaking dark this stuff is. The MSRP on this is $80. I've seen them anywhere between the $80 and $90 price tag. It's not age stated, but it's rumored to be somewhere around 6 years old. But what they do with this barrel from MGP, what they do with this juice is then they finish it with Georgia Heartwood staves. I think like 20 staves dipped into the barrel to finish the whiskey off. And then it is non-chill filtered. It is just straight from the barrel into the bottle. Here you go. So maybe the idea here is you go with a wheated, so it sort of softens the whiskey up a bit, and then you do the Heartwood finishing, and then you're sort of trying to replace what you took out of the whiskey with the wheat, and let the Heartwood really shine through. Maybe that's the goal, the intended purpose here. But with it being this dark, being called, you know, the Georgia Heartwood release, and knowing that it's been finished with 20 staves, I'm expecting to get some really strong oak vibes off of this, but we shall see. Let's get in here and nose it first, shall we? You know, on the nose, I remember when I was in college, I would often go to the local coffee shop and ask for like a Cuban style cup of coffee. And what they do is they add, I think it's like brown sugar and cinnamon. This to me reminds me of like coffee and cinnamon on the nose. Like that Cuban style coffee. Brown sugars, cinnamons, coffee grounds, all of it right here on the nose. I am getting a healthy dose of oak, but it's not oak that is particularly different from other double oaked bottles that I've had. I'm wondering if the Heartwood, Georgia Heartwood oak is gonna leave an impression that's dramatically different, that's distinct enough to be its own thing, you know what I'm saying? And maybe that'll be more present on the palate than on the nose. Nose, very nice. I like it a lot on the nose. Let's get in here and try it. I will note it's not super viscous. It's semi-viscous. It's not super viscous. Kind of a thin coating on the glass. Let's try it. Cheers. Wow. Admittedly, first sip of the day. Got to cut through some of that oaky spice. But this is a coffee cherry bomb. I get a ton of rich, dark black coffee on the mid palate, and on the tail end of that coffee note comes this dark cherry that sort of rides out well into the finish. And the framing is all this oak spice. I got hit with this wave of spice right up front on the sip, and then the end of the palate and then into the finish is where a lot of that oak spice comes back around, sort of sits on my tongue for a while, and we sort of ride that wave all the way to completion. On second sip, the oak spices are not as prominent up front. Now I'm sort of acclimated to it. Brittle toffee notes, and definitely that dark cherry late into the palate, riding out into the finish alongside that oak. This is definitely a tasty pour. If I can nitpick about something, it would go back to my general feelings that I have about wheaters overall. I feel like if this had more corn in the mash, or even some rye in the mash bill, it would give it some of these nice bassy notes that you tend to get that the wheat removes. I want some rich caramels in here. I'm getting a lot of the bitter coffee and some of that dark cherry late into the palate, but I want some caramels underneath it, some vanillas and caramels underneath it to really support it. Just give it some robust body. This is comfortably above average, and I'm really enjoying the sip, but that would be my one nitpick, is less wheat, more corn or rye in the mash. It is letting the oak shine through in a big way. Those oak spices, very much present, especially in the late palate and then into the finish. But for the first half of the sip, I just want a little bit more robustness, a little bit more body, some chewy caramel. That being said, for an $80 price tag, it's pretty good. So is it a buy or is it a bust? I really do think that depends on you and your palate and what you tend to like. If you like what wheat does to a whiskey, softens it up, makes it more palatable, more approachable, I think that you might really get down with this because it allows the whiskey to soften up a little bit and let the oak really shine through that Georgia Heartwood process. And that, I think, is what's giving us so much of those dark coffee notes and the cinnamons. And I do really like those notes for sure. So I think I would have to put this at the very top of my maybe buy, because for me, I think that I would probably buy this, my personal palate, maybe I give it like a 7.0, but since it is sort of, towing that line for a lot of people's palates, I think maybe I'll just give it that 6.9, which is the very, very top of my maybe buy category. 6.9 for this. I think it depends on what your preferences are. For me, there's enough redeeming about it that I wouldn't ever mind having a bottle of this on my own shelf. But others of you may not really get down with the bitter coffees, the clean spirits you get out of wheaters, and that's totally okay too. So 6.9 is where I would score this. If I had to pick, I think their toasted rye would by far still be my preference. But there you go, that's the Georgia Heartwood. Thank you so much, Derry, for sending in the sample. I appreciate it. I actually have yet to have anything from Fiddler that I just don't like. They're either comfortably above average to really good, and this is no exception there. And thank you so much for watching the video today. I appreciate each and every one of you. Feel free to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and kick your shoes off, stay a while. Hit the sub button if you haven't already. We'd love to see you around here more often. We have a public Discord you should check out. Totally free to join. Links in the description. People there are great, very friendly, very personable, posting all the time, pictures of their whiskeys, their acquisitions, the things they're picking up, also helping each other out find the things that we're interested in. So get involved. We'd love to have you in our community. Cheers, my friends. May you live richly and get better with age, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.